As New Jersey's morning opened under a heavy gray, something unusual stirred around Tony Soprano's house. This time, though, the movement wasn't from Tony's men. It was the FBI. The season opens from the viewpoint of the federal agents, a new shadow settling over Tony's world. While Tony shaved in the bathroom that morning and Carmela prepared breakfast in the kitchen, the house looked like any family's routine. Outside, however, agents sat in cars with headsets and folders, viewing this ordinary life through a very different lens. To them, every plate in Tony's kitchen, every phone call, every walk might be a clue. They watched for a chance to plant listening devices inside the house. The episode's title, Mr. Ruggiero's Neighborhood, is the ironic code name for the operation. To them, the Sopranos were simply a neighborhood to be surveilled. At one point, an agent murmurs, "Their life looks a lot like ours." But in truth, Tony's world is far from any standard American household. At breakfast, Tony opens the paper. Carmela, in her familiar tone, says, "You need to watch your cholesterol." Tony smiles, but he's a storm inside. After Richie April's removal, the family's balance has been reset. Janice is still in New Jersey, leaning on Tony more since Richie's death. While dealing with his sister's problems, Tony is also trying to put his own house in order. In one scene, Janice enters the kitchen with a dramatic look and talks to Carmela about Richie. Carmela listens patiently, but her eyes show fatigue. She knows Janice's troubles are adding to Tony's burden. The most striking thread is the FBI's operation. The agents plan to break into Tony's house and plant bugs. When the house is empty, the camera follows their quiet glide through the rooms. The kitchen, the bedroom, Tony's office. They leave no trace. We see Carmela's pillow on the bed, Tony's toothbrush in the bathroom. The moment drives home that Tony's home, his most private space, is now under watch. One agent stares at the bed and whispers, "All that big man's power melts away right here." Even a mob boss's most vulnerable moments can fall under someone else's control. Unaware of the plan, Tony deals with other business. In meetings with Paulie and Silvio, he says, "We're going to stabilize things without Richie. No one's going to exploit the gap." Furio is at the table too. Tony gives him more responsibility. Furio's hardness and loyalty matter to him. Pussy's absence still lingers. His betrayal and subsequent removal left a hollow in the crew's spirit. When Tony thinks of it, his face hardens. No one speaks of it aloud. Everyone knows the price of betrayal. Carmela is more distant with Tony. The trust in their marriage is fraying. She senses Tony's infidelities without naming them. In one scene, she visits the priest and talks at length, searching for peace. But his words don't quite reach her heart. Her deeper crisis is feeling she has lost her own identity in the shadow of Tony's life. The agents finally succeed in planting the bugs. The camera reveals a tiny device hidden inside the kitchen light fixture, a secret window into Tony's world. The FBI is now close to hearing every word, every breath. Ironically, the device fails shortly after it's installed. As the agents listen, all they get is static. The scene underlines that despite their preparation, Tony remains a force they cannot fully control. The sky over New Jersey was heavy and gray. Inside Tony Soprano's home, an invisible tension moved through the air. For days, his mother Livia's condition had hung over him like a shadow. Years of clashes, cold stares, and the wounds she left in him were now returning in another form, because Livia's life had ended. Her death stirred a storm of conflicting feelings in Tony. The episode begins with Tony receiving the news. As the phone call ends, his face goes blank. Carmela watches from the doorway. Not a single tear appears. Inside Tony, grief and anger are tangled together. His mother's death feels less like a loss than an unresolved account. He hangs up and sits in silence for a moment, then takes a deep breath and stands. Carmela approaches. "I'm sorry for your loss," she says, but there's a strange distance in her voice. She too had felt Livia's chill for years. She tried to understand Tony's relationship with his mother, but never could. Within the Soprano family, the death sparks different reactions. Janice arrives sobbing theatrically, putting her drama front and center. Tony meets it with a disdainful look. To him, her tears are more performance than sincerity. Meadow faces it with a different kind of quiet. Preparing for college, she knows her mother never loved Livia, yet she retreats inward before death. Tony notices his daughter's fragility but doesn't approach. His own anger is still too raw. During funeral preparations, Tony's temper breaks often. At one point he says to Paulie, "That woman never said a single kind word to me in her life. Now people are going to say nice things about her?" Paulie falls silent. Everyone knows the weight of Tony's history with his mother. Silvio steps in. "She was still your mother, Tony. People want to see you show her respect." This only angers Tony more. Respect for what? Her coldness, her betrayals, the way she conspired to have her own son killed. These left an unforgivable wound. The funeral scenes are among the most powerful. Family members gather, each wearing a different mask. Janice displays her tears. Carmela carries a quiet dignity. Meadow stares vacantly. Tony stands at the casket in silence. He sees his mother's cold face in his mind. As a child, he searched for her love and never found it. As an adult, he received only criticism and contempt. The body in the coffin doesn't represent the loss of a mother to him. It represents an unfinished fight. As visitors offer condolences, "What a strong woman. She was always disciplined." A forced smile flickers on Tony's face. His eyes flash with anger. Inside, he wants to shout, "You didn't know her! She destroyed us," but he says nothing. The family image must be maintained. The split between appearance and truth weighs on him even more. Sessions with Dr. Melfi carry particular depth. Tony speaks of his mother's death with anger and regret. "I didn't love her. I never did. Now she's dead and I feel nothing." Melfi replies calmly, "That's not indifference. It's suppressed pain. You waited for her to fill your childhood emptiness. She never did and you never received it." Tony looks away, the muscles in his face twitching. Her words are the truth. After the funeral, the family returns home. Guests leave. Only the inner circle remains. Janice dramatizes again, turning to Tony. "Don't you feel anything? She was our mother." Tony leaps up in fury. "Have you forgotten her games? She worked with others to have me killed. What mother does that?" Janice falls silent, a sly smile on her lips. She knew their mother's lovelessness too, but uses the moment to posture. Tony's scene with Meadow is one of the most moving. She approaches quietly. "She was still your mother." Tony pauses, his eyes almost filling. Then he gathers himself. "She wasn't a good grandmother to you, and she wasn't a good mother to me. I'm not mourning her." Meadow lowers her head, but his words strike her. As a young woman, she struggles to understand such numbness before death. As Tony tosses restlessly in bed, he drifts into a dream. Memories of his childhood surface. He is in his father Johnny Boy Soprano's butcher shop, watching as a bloody piece of meat is cut. In the boy's eyes there is both awe and fear. Tony wakes up drenched in sweat. Carmela, lying beside him, looks at him with worry but says nothing. She has long grown used to the nightmares that haunt Tony's sleep. At breakfast the next morning, Meadow talks about her university plans, while AJ quietly stirs his cereal. It's an important day for him. He is about to join the school football team. Carmela smiles at her son and says, "It'll be a proud day for you." Tony drifts off into thought for a moment, seeing AJ's future on the field overlap with his own childhood. On the school field, AJ plays football as Tony and Carmela watch from the stands. Tony's face shows a father's pride, but suddenly AJ falters, gasps for breath, and collapses. Panic erupts around him. Tony bolts from the stands and rushes onto the field. In his eyes is terror, as the memory of his father's heart attack from childhood flashes back. Kneeling by his son, he sees both the ghost of his past and the fear of the present. Thankfully, AJ's collapse is not serious, just a brief fainting spell. Still, the moment leaves a deep scar in Tony's mind, convincing him his son may carry the same inherited shadow. Tony's childhood trauma takes center stage in this episode. Flashbacks show young Tony in the butcher shop with Johnny Boy. His father tells him, "This is how a man starts out," as he buys meat. The boy's eyes are filled with curiosity and dread. The heaviest moment comes when Johnny Boy beats a debtor in the back of the shop. Little Tony turns his eyes away but hears every sound. This is one of his life's defining moments, the first time he saw his father's violence, power, and terrifying side. In therapy, Tony recounts these memories to Dr. Melfi. Quietly, he says, "I saw my father like that, beating the guy. That's when I knew there was no escape. My path was set." Melfi listens intently. "That moment made you believe your fate was sealed?" Tony nods. "I had no other choice. I don't know if my son will either." His eyes show a flicker of vulnerability. AJ's collapse was not just a health scare, but a mirror of Tony's own past. Meanwhile, mafia business presses on with brutal force. Jackie Aprile Jr. takes more screen time, young, reckless, and irresponsible. Tony treats him with both protection and sternness, feeling duty-bound to look after his old friend's son. But Jackie Jr.'s careless behavior in clubs looks to Tony like a bad omen for the future. Paulie and Silvio enforce debts with violence. When a man cannot pay, Paulie beats him viciously as Tony watches with cold detachment. Inside, though, Tony aches. He is repeating his father's actions. The man's screams echo in his mind, blending with childhood memories of Johnny Boy's fists. Carmela presses Tony harder this episode. After AJ's collapse, she looks at him and says, "Your genes, your life. Don't let AJ follow the same path." Tony fires back. "Without what I do, there would be no house, no school, no life like this." Carmela falls silent, eyes narrowed. Her face shows she is bottling more and more inside. Meadow also distances herself. Preparing for college, she longs to break free of her family's shadow. In one scene, she says, "My life won't be your life." Tony's eyes glisten, but he hides it with anger. "You grew up under my roof, don't be ungrateful." Deep down, though he envies her freedom. One of the most striking moments is another dream sequence. Tony again sees Johnny Boy behind the butcher's counter, holding bloody meat. Young Tony waits in the corner. His father looks at him and says, "You're my son. There's no other path for you." Tony screams, "I didn't choose this." But his father's voice drowns him out. He wakes, drenched in sweat. Carmela beside him asks, "Another nightmare?" Tony stays silent. The dream is too close to his truth. Near the end, AJ returns to the football field. Tony's eyes are locked on him every second. AJ runs with the ball, but Tony's face stays tense. He sees his son's future entangled with his own past. On what seems like an ordinary morning, Carmela prepares breakfast in the kitchen while AJ reluctantly sits at the table. Meadow is on the phone. Tony opens the newspaper, but his mind is elsewhere. Carmela looks at him and says, "You've been more withdrawn lately." Tony tries to smile, but it fades quickly. In his mind, the shadow of the FBI, the fragile balance of business, and his own restless thoughts swirl. Yet this quiet domestic scene stands in stark contrast to the darkness looming ahead. That day, Dr. Melfi walks to her car after work and is suddenly attacked in the parking lot. A young man assaults her, knocks her down, and a violent struggle ensues. The scene is raw, jarring, and horrifying. Melfi screams, but no one comes. The man drags her, overpowers her, and finally rapes her. The camera lingers on Melfi's face, her eyes filled with fear, helplessness, and silence, searing the audience with one of the series' most devastating moments. After the assault, Melfi is taken to the hospital. Her face is bruised, her eyes vacant. Doctors administer sedatives. Her husband and family are at her side, but her gaze is fixed far away. What happened to her is not only a physical attack, but a wound etched deep into her soul. Melfi later learns that her attacker has been arrested, only to hear soon after that he has been released. The system has failed her. The news brings a mix of horror and rage to her expression. Her family tells her, "Tell Tony, he'll take care of it." But Melfi remains silent. She knows Tony's role in the world. Revenge is his business. Yet within her, a battle rages between her conscience, her profession, and her identity. Meanwhile, Tony is occupied with business. Meeting with Paulie and Silvio, they discuss shipments, collections, and territory. But Tony's face often drifts into silence. Deep inside, his mind is preoccupied with the bond he feels toward Melfi and the complicated emotions she stirs in him. In their next session, Melfi does not tell Tony about the assault. Instead, they discuss his anger and childhood traumas. But behind her calm demeanor, Melfi's eyes threaten to fill with tears. Sitting across from her is the one man who could end her attacker's life with a single command. As the session ends and Tony heads for the door, Melfi's eyes linger on him. Inside, she screams, "Kill him!" But her lips do not move. This silence becomes the greatest test of her career and her humanity. Throughout the episode, Melfi's nightmares haunt her. She wakes screaming, seeing her attacker's face. In one dream, she is trapped in an elevator with him. The doors close, but Tony is there. He beats the man mercilessly as Melfi watches. In the dream, she feels both relief and fear, torn by the corrosive pull of vengeance. Tony, in his own world, clashes with Carmela. She tells him, "Your therapy isn't making you better. It's just making you more distant from me." Tony snaps back, "You don't know the weight I carry." Yet beneath the anger lies another truth, his emotions for Melfi, which he cannot name. He knows she fills a void no one else can. One of Melfi's most haunting dreams comes later. She sees her attacker locked in a cage. Tony stands before it, his eyes saying, "If you want, I can do this." She wakes with tears streaming down her face. Her subconscious has revealed her deepest desire, vengeance at Tony's hands. But awake, she cannot allow it. The climax arrives in another session. Tony speaks casually about business and family. As he gets up to leave, Melfi's eyes fix on him. Her lips part, but no words come. If she spoke, Tony would kill her attacker without hesitation. Instead, Tony walks out and tears spill from Melfi's eyes. Her silence has saved her principles, but at a staggering personal cost. The final scene shows Melfi sitting alone in her office. Her face holds both pain and pride. She looks at her phone but does not call Tony. Instead, she whispers to herself, "I can be strong." The camera lingers on her face, where tears mix with a faint glimmer of resilience. It is the most powerful moment of the episode. Melfi refuses to hand over her justice to Tony, but the weight of that choice will never leave her. The streets of New Jersey had sunk into a dark routine. But in Tony Soprano's world, no routine lasted long. Each day brought a new tension, a new confrontation. In this episode, Tony would face one of the harshest sides of his family, while also having to deal with the uncontrollable rage of his men in business. Another toothpick carried a metaphor that seemed small but cut deep. Like a splinter stuck between teeth, the conflicts within the family dug into Tony's mind. The episode opens with Tony sitting alone in his car. His face is contemplative as he stares through the windshield. Tightness in his stomach, pain in his chest, ghosts of the past drift through his mind. Carmela convinces him to see a doctor. Reluctantly, Tony goes in for a checkup. The scene underscores his fragility. The powerful mob boss is beneath it all, a man haunted by fears of his own mortality. The medical scenes are drawn out. The doctor warns Tony about his cholesterol, blood pressure, and stress. As the words sink in, Tony narrows his eyes. They remind him of his father, uncle's man taken too soon by heart disease. His face hardens, caught between fear and anger. "All I need is a toothpick," he mutters sarcastically. Yet beneath the bravado lies his terror of death. Meanwhile, tensions rise in business. Bobby Bacala's father, an old relic of mob days gone by, steps back into the picture. Though frail and sick, he still commands respect. Tony assigns him a task, and the old man insists, "I can still do my job." But the exhaustion in his eyes betrays him. He is a shadow of the old guard, clinging to relevance. Later, he will meet his end in a bloody, tragic scene. Paulie and Christopher bring another storm. Paulie's rage once again spirals out of control. After a road altercation with a black man who dares to stand up to him, Paulie explodes. He beats the man viciously. The camera lingers on the brutality. Paulie's rage has no clear cause, only the kind of violence that disrupts Tony's fragile order. When Tony hears of it, his face falls in disappointment. Every outburst by his men reflects back on his authority. Tony's scenes with Junior are equally strong. Junior, under house arrest, is growing old and weak. Tony visits him. In Junior's eyes, there is regret and unease. "We're all heading for the same end," he says. Tony remains silent, though anger flickers in his gaze. He cannot forget his uncle's betrayal. Still, watching this once powerful man fade unsettles him deeply. At home, Carmela zeroes in on Tony's health. One night at the dinner table, she tells him sharply, "Keep this up and you'll be in the ground before you ever see your children grow." Tony's face darkens. Her words remind him of his parents, his relatives taken young. "This is my life, my work," he retorts. But for a brief moment, his eyes reveal the truth. Carmela is right. The episode's climax comes with Bobby's father's final act. He sits in his car wheezing from asthma, waiting for his target. Despite his failing body, he is determined to finish the job. When the target arrives, he pulls his gun and fires. But his frailty betrays him. Chaos erupts, shots ring out, and the old man is mortally wounded. Slumping into the steering wheel, he dies drenched in blood. His end is both dramatic and tragic. Even in his last breath, he cannot escape the shadow of violence. When Tony hears the news, his face shows something between respect and disillusionment. He mutters, "Like a toothpick, nothing really matters." The metaphor from the beginning comes full circle. Life is as fragile and disposable as a sliver of wood caught between teeth. Meanwhile, Meadow begins her new life at Columbia University. She attends classes, makes new friends, and relishes her independence. Her scenes brim with youthful energy, standing in sharp contrast to the darkness elsewhere. When Tony visits, Meadow is proud but distant. "This place is good for me," she says. Tony looks at her, his eyes filled with both pride and envy. She has a chance at the freedom he never had. Yet it unsettles him. Her future means leaving his shadow behind. The heaviest storyline, however, begins with Tracy, a young stripper at the Bada Bing Club. Barely in her 20s, she is trapped by circumstance, yet carries a fragile spark of hope. Tracy is romantically involved with Ralph Cifaretto, one of Tony's men, known as much for his cunning as for his cruelty. Tracy clings to him out of desperation, though he shows her little kindness. One day, Tracy approaches Tony with a smile. "I'm pregnant," she says. Tony is shocked. "Whose is it?" he asks. "Ralph's," she answers. Tony's face tightens. He knows Ralph will never bear that responsibility. Yet Tony responds with rare warmth. "Take care of yourself." In that moment, Tracy becomes something more to him, a haunting reminder of what his own daughter could one day face in a cruel world. The relationship between Ralph and Tracy grows more toxic. He belittles her, abuses her. In the club in front of Tony, Ralph lashes out at her with words. Tony intervenes. "Don't talk to a woman like that." Ralph only smirks, mocking him. It is a spark of the brutal clash still to come. Tracy is unlike Carmela or any of the strong women in Tony's orbit. She has nothing but her body, and even that is exploited. Yet behind her smile flickers a dream that life could be different. The breaking point arrives in a violent confrontation. Tracy yells at Ralph, finally defying him. Ralph snaps. In the back of the club, he savagely beats her. The camera lingers on every blow. Her screams, her body collapsing, Ralph's fists. At last he kills her. Silence follows, broken only by the image of her lifeless body. When Tony learns of it, horror floods his face. At the club, he confronts Ralph, beating him in fury. "What kind of man are you?" he roars. The others restrain him, but his eyes burn with hatred. Ralph's act was not just the murder of a young woman. It was the crossing of a moral line that even Tony could not tolerate. Tracy's death becomes inseparable from Meadow in Tony's mind. Meadow's bright, free future at Columbia clashes against Tracy's brutal end. For Tony, the contrast is unbearable. That night back home, Carmela confronts him. "Your business is destroying our lives." Tony says nothing. Inside, grief, rage, and guilt twist together. Later, Tony watches Meadow laughing with her friends on campus. His eyes hold both joy and dread. Tracy's fate echoes as a warning. His daughter lives in the shadow of his world. His inner voice whispers, "She's my only salvation." The final scene is dark and heavy. Tony sits alone outside the club, cigarette in hand, face weary. Inside, Ralph still drinks and jokes. The men laugh. But Tony's expression is hollow. Tracy's death has forced him to confront once more the blackness of the life he leads. On a quiet morning in church, Carmela sits during Mass, her hands clasped in prayer. The priest's words echo in the air, but Carmela's mind is restless. Years of marriage, the darkness of Tony's business, the uncertainty of her children's future, all of it weighs heavily on her. When she leaves the church, her face carries unease. She can no longer silence her conscience. That day, she visits a psychiatrist named Dr. Krakauer, recommended by a friend. This appointment will become one of the most shattering moments of her life. Krakauer listens carefully at first. Carmela speaks of Tony's anger, his infidelity, his distance. She finally gives voice to the resentments she has carried for years. After a long silence, Krakauer delivers a cold, piercing sentence. "Your problem isn't your husband. It's that you choose to stay with him." Carmela's eyes widen. No one has ever spoken to her so directly. She explains that Tony is a mob boss and that the life weighs on her. Krakauer doesn't interrupt, but when he finally responds, his words cut deeper. "Your husband makes his money in blood, and you live off that blood money. The only solution is to leave him, take your children, and go." Carmela's eyes well with tears. Her lips tremble. But Krakauer presses on. "If you don't, then you are complicit in his crimes." These words echo in Carmela's mind long after the session ends. For the first time, someone has laid bare the truth she has always avoided. But the weight of that truth is unbearable. Leaving the office, she sits in her car, tears streaming down her face. She doesn't start the engine. Outside, people go about their ordinary lives, while Carmela's world has been shattered. At home, she doesn't tell Tony about the session, but the change in her demeanor doesn't escape him. At dinner, Tony asks, "What's wrong with you?" Carmela shrugs, "I'm just tired." But inside, even Tony's presence suffocates her. Krakauer's words are nailed into her conscience. Meanwhile, Tony is dealing with Junior's medical problems. After his cancer surgery, Junior grows irritable in the hospital, snapping at the nurses. When Tony visits, Junior mutters, "We're all going to die one day. Your money, your power, they won't save you." Tony's face hardens. His uncle's words sting, rekindling his own fear of death. He lashes out at Junior, but the truth lingers. Meadow continues her life at university. Yet when Carmela speaks with her, she feels increasing dread. In her daughter's future, she sees the shadow of Tony. One evening, she tells Meadow, "Be strong. Make your own path." Meadow looks at her in surprise. She isn't used to hearing such words from her mother. Throughout the episode, Carmela distances herself from Tony. In bed, she avoids conversation, even eye contact. Tony grows uneasy. "Are you mad at me?" he asks. Carmela replies quietly, "Sometimes I just want to be alone." But what she truly wants is not solitude, but to reconcile with her conscience. In another scene, Carmela returns to the church and speaks with the priest. His words are gentle, filled with hope, but she wavers between his consolations and Krakowa's brutal truths, between faith and reality. Her eyes reflect both hope and despair. Tony, on his side, is consumed by business matters, yet the episode weighs heavily even on him. Junior's illness, petty disputes among his men, and Carmela's coldness at home leave him unsettled. One night he visits Dr. Melfi. He asks quietly, "Will she leave me?" Melfi studies him. "Even thinking about that possibility hurts you, doesn't it?" Tony says nothing. But yes, the thought of Carmela leaving shakes his entire world. The episode reaches its peak when Carmela tries to see Krakowa again, but the doctor refuses. The secretary tells her, "The doctor won't meet with you again. He already told you what you need to do." Carmela is stunned. Deep down, she had hoped to hear more. But Krakowa's position is firm. She must face her own choices. Outside the building, Carmela's face is marked with anger and despair. She is now more alone than ever. The final scene shows Carmela sitting alone in the kitchen. On the table lie stacks of cash Tony left behind. She stares at the money, then closes her eyes as tears stream down her cheeks. Krakowa's words echo in her mind. "You live off this money. You are complicit." The camera lingers on her tears. The house is silent, yet within that silence her conscience screams. At the same time, Tony is elsewhere with Junior. He says, "We Sopranos can handle anything." But as the camera pulls back, we see both Tony and Carmela, isolated in their own separate worlds. Tony trapped by power, Carmela by guilt. As the New Jersey night falls, only Krakowa's harsh words remain in the viewer's mind. "Leave, take your children and go." But Carmela does not. And that is the cruelest truth of all. The cold autumn wind swept through New Jersey. But around the Soprano family, the air was heavy not only with the season. It carried anger, wounded pride, and reckonings waiting in the shadows. He Is Risen centers on the tension between Ralph Cifaretto and Tony, and how that tension ripples through the family. At the same time, Meadows' evolving university life and Carmela's own inner unrest enrich the story. The episode opens with Tony sitting alone in his car. On the radio, a Christmas commercial plays, reminding everyone of the approaching holidays. But Tony's face carries no holiday cheer. His mind is fixed on Ralph. After Tracy's death, Ralph's value has become zero in Tony's eyes, yet Ralph remains an important cog in the wheel. Cutting him off completely would disrupt business. As Tony stares out the windshield, his expression wavers between anger and resignation. In scenes with Paulie and Silvio, Ralph's name comes up repeatedly. "Ralph brings in money," Silvio says. Paulie, more cynical, adds, "But he's got no respect." Tony's jaw tightens. Ralph's ability to make money corners him. He can barely stand to look at the man, yet he cannot deny his usefulness. This contradiction becomes the core of the episode. Carmela senses Tony's tension. At dinner, Tony is silent, tapping his fork against the plate. "It's about work again, isn't it?" she asks. Tony hesitates, then shrugs. "Some men don't know their place." Carmela exhales heavily. She fears his anger spilling into the home. Meanwhile, Ralph tries to win Tony's approval. He lingers around him, cracks jokes, offers gestures. But Tony's responses are icy. Ralph's smirking grin only fuels Tony's rage. The tension between them is so palpable that even the other men can hardly breathe. A major turning point comes with Ralph's expectation of becoming capo. Everyone knows he wants the position left vacant after Jackie April's death. Ralph doesn't say it outright, but his behavior makes it clear. Tony, however, cannot stomach the idea. The thought of Ralph rising to such a position feels like an insult. Yet the other side of the equation is money and the delicate balance of power. Tony is trapped in this dilemma. Meadows' college life takes center stage as well. We see her chatting with friends, surrounded by an intellectual, freer world. She is trying to step out of her father's shadow and carve her own path. One evening in her dorm, she contemplates taking her relationship with her boyfriend to the next level. The youthful excitement on her face stands in sharp contrast to the darkness hanging over Tony at home. When Tony learns of Meadow's relationship, he erupts with anger. But Carmela intervenes. She's grown now, she'll make her own choices, she says. Tony's expression softens into that of a helpless father. He wants to protect his daughter, but cannot stop her from living her own life. Meadow's independence collides with Tony's need for control, creating a quiet but powerful clash. The Tony-Ralph tension is most visible at Satrial's. Ralph tries to joke with him. "Why so cold?" he asks. Tony clenches his jaw, saying nothing. In truth, he can't erase Tracy's death from his mind. He won't voice it aloud, but his deep disgust radiates in silence. Junior's scenes add another layer. Still battling health problems, he hasn't let go of his scheming. When Tony visits, Junior warns, "You think you're the leader, but are your men truly with you?" That's the real question. Tony bristles. Junior's words strike directly at the heart of the Ralph dilemma. Carmela, too, struggles with inner turmoil. She goes to church, speaking with the priest. He urges patience, reminding her Tony is still human, telling her to pray. Carmela bows her head, but her face is empty. She knows prayer cannot resolve the darkness she lives in. The climax comes when Tony and Ralph nearly come to blows. At a group dinner, Ralph throws out another sly remark. Tony's face burns red. He rises from the table, lunging at Ralph. The others step in, breaking it up. But it's clear to everyone, Tony's patience has run out. That night, Tony returns home. Carmela greets him, but he lights a cigarette and stays silent. "Why are you so angry?" she asks. Tony looks down. Some men are a mistake just for being alive. Carmela doesn't answer. She knows too well how lethal his rage can be. The final scene shows Tony sitting alone in the backyard. The wind scatters the leaves. In the distance, Christmas lights flicker. But there is no light in Tony's face. His eyes are fixed on the darkness, his lips shaping only one name, Ralph. As the camera pulls back, Tony's solitude fills the frame, a chilling omen of the storm to come. Meadow has begun to settle into college life. She laughs with friends, studies in her dorm room. The dorm scenes are vibrant and full of life. But inside Meadow, there is a mix of relief from escaping her family's shadow and the lingering pressure of Tony's control. In one scene, she meets her boyfriend, Jackie Jr. He approaches Meadow with affection, but there's a carelessness, a lack of responsibility in his demeanor. As the son of Tony's old friend, Jackie April, Jackie Jr. wants to carry his father's charisma, but lacks his discipline. Around him, Meadow feels both free and vulnerable. Tony keeps a close watch on Jackie Jr., seeing him as his responsibility. One evening, when Jackie Jr. comes to the house, Tony studies him carefully. "Your father was a different kind of man," he says sternly. Jackie Jr. lowers his head, but there's a spark of defiance in his eyes. Tony notices it and feels unsettled. That look hints at trouble waiting to surface. AJ's story also takes the spotlight in this episode. With his group of friends, he acts out at school. One night, they break into an empty house and trash it. Pizza boxes, empty bottles, broken furniture. The boy's eyes flicker with both excitement and fear. For AJ, this is a small rebellion against living in his father's shadow. But when the incident comes to light, it becomes a source of shame for the family. Tony explodes with rage. He confronts AJ. "You're my son! You can't disgrace our name." AJ's eyes well with tears, but he can't withstand his father's fury. Carmela steps in during this scene. Turning to Tony, she says, "Give him some room. He's still a child." Tony snaps back, "That's why he's spoiled. In my time, there was no childhood." Carmela narrows her eyes, recognizing that Tony is speaking from his own scarred childhood. For him, AJ's mischief isn't just a mistake, it's an insult to his authority. Meanwhile, Meadow deepens her relationship with Jackie Jr. She welcomes him into her dorm room, spending time together. But Jackie Jr.'s recklessness grows clearer. Sweet and gentle with Meadow, he starts dabbling in shady dealings outside. These scenes validate Tony's fears. In Jackie Jr.'s face, he sees not his father's strength but the shadows of downfall. Ralph Cifaretto continues to hover around Tony, still pressing to be made capo. In one scene, Ralph cracks jokes at Tony's table. Tony shoots him a cold stare. Ralph's smile freezes, and the entire room falls silent under the weight of their tension. AJ's misbehavior reverberates through the family. Carmela tries to shield her son, but Tony's anger doesn't fade. One night, Tony leaves AJ alone in his room, telling him, "Don't lose the pride I see in you." AJ looks away, crushed under the weight of his father's expectations. Junior appears briefly in this episode as well. Restless under house arrest, he broods over the past. When Tony visits, Junior remarks, "Kids are spoiled. Back in our day, things were different." Tony silently agrees, though his face tightens. After all, his own son is living out that very recklessness. The climax of the episode comes when AJ's vandalism becomes public knowledge. Tony scrambles to salvage the family's honor. He meets with the school administration, defending his son but seething inside. Afterward, he sits in his car, lighting a cigarette, his face etched with both disappointment and fury. AJ's behavior forces him to confront his own youth and lack of control. Meadows' independence also tests Tony. When he visits her dorm and finds her with Jackie Jr., his face hardens with both paternal anger and heartbreak. Carmela intervenes again. "What you see in her is your own reflection. You can't erase your past by punishing her." Tony falls silent, though his expression shows he refuses to accept Carmela's truth. The final scene shows Tony sitting alone in the backyard. AJ sits quietly upstairs in his room. Meadow laughs with friends on campus, and Ralph still lurks in Tony's shadow. The camera lingers on Tony's face. A father fearing failure, a boss fearing lost authority, and a man haunted by his past. He lights a cigar, blowing smoke into the cold night sky. As the smoke dissipates, the tension on his face deepens. The episode closes with the theme that the sins of fathers inevitably cast shadows on their children's destinies. As New Jersey's winter chill settles in, another heavy season reigns inside the Soprano household. Christmas approaches, lights strung on houses, carols sung in churches. Yet Tony Soprano's world is haunted more by ghosts than peace. This episode carries both the ache of loss and the looming threat of betrayal. The episode opens with Tony wandering through a mall decorated for Christmas. Families carry bags, children laugh, but Tony's face is grim. In the crowd, he is utterly alone. At one shop window, he stops at the sight of a man in a Santa suit. His mind flashes back to Pussy. Last season's betrayal still bleeds in his memory. The camera closes in on his face, anger, regret, and the sting of lost friendship. At Satriale's, his absence is palpable. Pussy's empty chair sits like a wound at the table. As Paulie and Silvio talk, Tony drifts away in thought. Pussy's name echoes in his mind. Did we have to kill him? He wonders, followed by the answer, if he'd lived, he would have kept betraying us. This torment steals his sleep. Meanwhile, Carmela busies herself with Christmas preparations. She decorates the house, lights the tree. But she notices Tony's detachment. At dinner, she says, "Christmas is coming, but your face is still a storm cloud." Tony shrugs. "The past won't leave me alone." Carmela suspects his ghosts are not just business losses. Meadow, now more independent at college, comes home for Christmas. At the dinner table, Tony looks at her with pride, but there is distance in her eyes. She is becoming her own woman, stepping out of his shadow. Tony feels both pride and fear. Her freedom means his authority slipping away. One of the episode's most striking moments is Tony's dream of Pussy. In the dream, Pussy appears dressed as Santa Claus. Tony asks him, "Why did you betray me?" Pussy smiles. I had my path. Tony clenches his fists in rage, but the dream dissolves. He wakes drenched in sweat. Carmela, worried, asks, "Another nightmare?" Tony nods, his eyes empty. Ralph looms again this episode, still expecting to be made capo. Though Tony ignores him, the pressure mounts. Sylvia warns, "If you keep stalling him, he'll cause trouble." Tony's face tightens. Ralph has both money and men behind him, but Tony cannot reward him. Tracy's death still burns in his memory. Their standoff weighs heavily on the crew. Junior appears briefly, weakened but reflective. During Tony's visit, he muses, "Christmas is for peace." Tony retorts bitterly, "There's no peace for us." Junior nods. Knowing he's right, peace is only an illusion in their world. The most poignant thread of the episode is Pussy's ghost haunting Tony. One night in the garage, Tony leafs through an old photo album. Pictures of him and Pussy. Smiles, bottles, family picnics. Tears well in Tony's eyes, but he wipes them away. He cannot show weakness to his men. Alone, though, he grieves for the lost bond. Carmela tries to reach him. "Leave the past." "We're here." Tony meets her gaze for a moment, then turns away. Her words cannot soothe him. In his mind, Pussy's face remains vivid. The final scene unfolds on Christmas Eve. The family gathers around the tree, lights twinkling, presents being opened. Laughter fills the house. Yet Tony's face is shadowed. The camera lingers close. In his eyes, Pussy's ghost, Tracy's scream, and Ralph's smirk all coexist. As carols play softly in the background, Tony's loneliness becomes more pronounced. The camera slowly pulls back. The glow of Christmas lights fills the windows, but inside, Tony's darkness consumes them. Tony recounts his relationship with Gloria Trillo and her volatile mood swings during a session with Melfi. Melfi listens closely. Beneath Tony's words lies a mix of concealed admiration and simmering anger, because Gloria challenges him. Melfi gives him a cautious look. "You like a dangerous woman," she says. Tony smiles, but behind that smile his feelings are complicated. Meanwhile, Paulie and Christopher are given a job that seems small. Collect from a Russian named Valerie. Tony wants it handled quickly and without fuss, but Paulie's pride and temper send everything off the rails. Paulie and Chris go to Valerie's place. Drinks on the table, the TV on. Valerie drags his feet about paying and mocks them. Paulie's patience snaps. He lunges at the man. A fight explodes, fists flying, furniture crashing. In the struggle, they knock Valerie down hard. Seeing the blood, they think he's dead. Panicking, they wrap the body in a rug and load it into the car. That's where the forest sequences begin. They drive deep into the pine barrens. It's bitter cold, snow starting to fall. The forest silence is broken only by the engine's hum. Paulie stops the car. "We'll bury him here. No one will ever find it," he says. But Valerie suddenly comes to. Chris and Paulie freeze. Valerie shoves them and bolts into the trees. Their faces turn to a mix of fear and rage. Guns out, they give chase. A cat-and-mouse game unfolds in the woods. Snow thickens, breath turns to steam, footprints vanish. Paulie and Chris start blaming each other. "This is your fault," Paulie shouts. Chris fires back. "If it weren't for you, there wouldn't have been a fight." Their tension spikes. The forest tests their patience, their partnership, and their loyalty. At one point, they think they've got Valerie. They fire and the man drops. Panting, they move in, only to find he's gone. The woods are a maze. Valerie seems to have vanished. Panic sets in. There are rumors he once served in the KGB. In their minds, he's become a ghost. Hours pass in the forest. Hunger, cold, and fear pile up. Paulie pulls off his shoe and rubs his foot. "My toes are freezing." Chris sinks onto the snow, exhausted. They stop bickering and focus on surviving. But the trust between them is cracked. Elsewhere, Tony is with Gloria. Their relationship's ebb and flow forms the episode's second thread. Gloria is warm one moment, icy the next. Tony's patience is strained, yet he can't let go. She triggers both his weakness and his buried anger. On a call from Paulie, Tony tries to make sense of the mess. Paulie is panicked. Tony, it's gotten complicated. Tony's angry, but there's a comic futility in it too. He doesn't want his guys freezing to death out there. He tells them to calm down. Daylight will straighten things out. Night falls in the woods. Paulie and Chris try to huddle in the car, but they're out of gas. Wrapped in a blanket, they shiver and trade insults. Hunger pushes them to the brink. Paulie digs out a tiny mustard packet and licks it while Chris glares. The moment is both grim and darkly funny. Mob enforcers reduced to a single mustard packet. Valeri's fate remains unclear. Did they actually hit him? Is he still out there in the trees? The not knowing burns hotter than any fire. A lethal enemy might still be nearby. At dawn, Tony moves to pull his men out. Calls go back and forth with Silvio. On Tony's face, anger and helplessness. A fiasco this big could make Ralph and the others question his leadership. Something Tony can't afford. Paulie and Chris are finally found, wrecked and half-frozen. Their faces are white, hands numb, eyes emptied out. Tony looks them over, disappointment flashing across his face, but he doesn't lay into them. They've already paid, in fear, hunger and uncertainty. The episode opens with Tony and Gloria at a car dealership. Gloria shows Tony a new model. The spark in her eyes is both alluring and dangerous. Tony is drawn in, yet uneasy. Gloria is perceptive and sharp enough to press every one of his bruised spots. Sitting in the car, Gloria suddenly flares, "Do you actually value me?" Tony is caught off guard, tries to placate her, but her mood swings are wearing him down. Carmela grows even more distant from Tony. In one scene, she sits alone in the kitchen, a cold cup in front of her. When Tony comes home and asks something mundane, Carmela answers curtly. The chill on her face catches Tony's eye. In her gaze are the years of burden and the shadow of infidelities. Tony ignores the silence. He's sunk into his own weaknesses, spinning in Gloria's riptide. Meadow also moves to the foreground. It's exam week. She's worn out and stressed. Her relationship with Jackie Jr. frays. He's sweet when he's with her, but behind the scenes he's slipping into gambling and petty hustles. Disappointment clouds Meadow's face, yet she can't quite let him go. Part of her wants to defy her father's shadow, to choose someone she wants, not the kind of man Tony would approve. Tony keeps seeing Melfi, but even in session, his mind drifts to Gloria. "She's driving me crazy," he says. Melfi replies evenly, "There's often ruin behind wild passion." Tony shrugs it off. The passion Gloria offers numbs the heaviness of his days. Ralph Cifaretto remains prominent, now a capo, yet still at odds with Tony. When Ralph visits the Soprano home, Carmela keeps her distance. Ralph's phony grin darkens Tony's mood. Ralph is necessary to the business and the man Tony despises most. The contradiction grinds Tony's nerves. Carmela's inner storm builds. She goes to church and prays in silence, tears on her face. "Show me a way out," she pleads to God. No answer comes. Her loneliness and helplessness starkly contrast Tony's growing dependence on Gloria. Tony and Gloria's affair turns more violent emotionally. At dinner, Gloria makes pointed remarks about Carmela. Tony snaps. Gloria starts crying, then laughing. Shock and anger cross Tony's face. He's beginning to see his mother's shadow in Gloria, manipulative, mercurial, ungoverned. The realization frightens him, even as it makes leaving her harder. In parallel, Jackie Jr.'s arc deepens. He and his friends attempt a small-time robbery. Hit a card game, but it spirals out of control. Guns come out, panic spreads. Jackie Jr.'s terrified yet won't back down. It's a warning shot for worse to come. When Tony hears, he rages. Jackie Jr. is under his protection, yet he's chasing reckless thrills instead of his father's honorable path. Carmela goes Christmas shopping with Meadow and AJ. Lights sparkle. Crowds laugh, but worry weighs on Carmela's face. Tony's infidelity, and her own powerlessness loop through her mind. With her family all around her, she still feels alone. The sharpest moment is Tony and Gloria's fight in the car. Gloria suddenly screams, "You compare me to your mother, don't you?" Tony freezes the naked truth. Gloria's chaos bears Livia Soprano's imprint. He shouts, jerks the car to the curb. Words escalate, nearly turning physical. Tears streak Gloria's cheeks as she stares at him. "Men like you always destroy me." Tony draws a long breath, opens the door and steps out. It's the breaking point of their affair. Snowflakes were falling slowly over New Jersey. Winter had arrived in full force. And in the world of the Soprano family, the cold wasn't only in the air. It came from the decisions, regrets, and anger buried in people's hearts. Army of One, as the Season 3 finale centers on loneliness, responsibility, and the crushing weight of fate. The episode opens on Jackie Jr.'s face. Desperate, frightened, and on the run, he hides after the casino heist. Panic, not regret, clouds his expression. His father's legacy sits on his shoulders like a weight he can't bear. Compared to Jackie Sr.'s honorable death, Jackie Jr.'s immaturity and recklessness are even more stark. When Tony learns of the situation, he explodes with anger. Jackie Jr. was under his protection. He had entered Meadows' life, become part of the family, and now he was nothing but a liability, a threat. At a meeting in Satriales, Silvio and Paulie insist the penalty is death. Conflict flashes across Tony's face. He respects the memory of Jackie Sr., but the laws of the mob leave no room for sentiment. Ralph Cifaretto is there too, smirking, needling Tony with his false respect and mocking tone, only fueling Tony's hatred. Meadow, unaware of Jackie Jr.'s hiding, hears rumors. Her eyes fill with tears. She turns to Tony. Jackie wouldn't do something like that. Tony stays silent, unwilling to tell her the truth. But his expression tells Meadow everything. Carmela presses Tony hard during this time. You were his father's closest friend. Now you'll abandon his son to death? She demands. Tony snaps back. I didn't make his choices. He walked into this life on his own. Yet regret lingers in his eyes. He had watched Jackie Jr. since childhood, could have guided him, but let him fall into the darkness instead. Meanwhile, AJ faces his own troubles. He fights at school, fails his classes. Tony and Carmela discuss sending him to military school. Fear and indifference mingle on AJ's face. Tony stares at him coldly. My son will learn responsibility. But AJ looks away. He too lives in his father's shadow, but wants no part of carrying it. Jackie Jr.'s end is the episode's cruelest moment. With Ralph's approval, the mob's rules are carried out. Found in his hiding place, Jackie Jr. begs, sobs, give me another chance, there is no chance. A gunshot rings out. He collapses. The camera doesn't linger on his body. The focus is on the echo of his death. When Meadow hears the news, her world shatters. At home, she screams, cries, lashes out at her father. This is your fault. Tony watches silently. He hadn't given the order directly, but he hadn't stopped it either. Meadow storms out, running into the snow. The camera shows her breath mixing with tears in the cold air. Tony watches from the window, her pain piercing him like a knife. Junior's scenes also carry weight. His trial progresses, his crimes dragged back into the light. Yet his faltering steps, his frail body in the courtroom form a tragicomic sight. Tony watches with a mix of anger and pity. Junior is far from the power he once held, but remains bound to Tony's fate. The shadow of Gloria Trillo lingers as well. Tony's rage carries the imprint of their passionate, destructive affair. In one scene, he sits alone in his car, Gloria's voice echoing in his mind. You saw me like your mother. Tony slams his fist against the wheel, that voice touching his deepest wound. The finale unfolds with heavy, almost poetic weight. The family gathers after Christmas, but each face carries its own shadow. Meadow sits silently, her eyes red. Carmela recites prayers. though inside she feels powerless. AJ looks bored at the table, and Tony sits at the head, but there is no peace in his face. The final scene shows Tony walking alone outside. Snow falls steadily in the yard. He pulls his coat tight, but the cold still seeps in. Looking up, snowflakes land on his face. Within him lies the weight of losses and responsibilities. Jackie Jr.'s death, Meadows' tears, Junior's decline, Carmela's despair. All of it presses on him like a stone. The camera pulls back. In the whiteness of the snow, Tony's solitary figure grows smaller. The episode title appears, Army of One, because in the end, Tony understands the truth. Within all this power, this family, and this war, he is utterly alone.